going into the playoffs, and a lot of people, including myself, wondered, can we see Notre Dame win the big game in the postseason? I want to see them win the big game postseason. I mean, they showed me that they could when they beat Indiana, but a lot of people were like, not so fast. They still haven't won that big bowl game. What do? They win that big bowl game against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. And then we see them beating Penn State in the Orange Bowl, tight fashion. I mean, it's like that's not a championship team. I don't know what is. I mean, it's alarming.
Yeah, man. I mean, so championship drought since '88. It's been 37 years, and I mean, to make it even worse, they hadn't won a New Year's Six bowl in my lifetime. So I was born in '97, and I started really diving into football and watching Notre Dame the way that I do when I was 8 years old in 2005, right? And since then, and it's not like they hadn't made it. I watched them lose in the Fiesta Bowl during the '05 season. I watched them lose in the Sugar Bowl to LSU in the '06 season. Obviously, we all know what happened in 2012 in the national championship. And then they play Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl in 2015, playoffs in 2018. So there's all these things that you watch what Notre Dame did in the postseason, and I hadn't seen it either. And covering the team, you had this faith that it was going to happen and you felt good about it, but there was still that little lingering thing in the back of your mind that was, I mean, we haven't seen them do it yet. We haven't seen this team get that signature win. I was with you. I think they needed to kind of see, like when a basketball player just needs to see one go through the hoop. Yeah. And then they kind of start rolling. I think that's what happened with Notre Dame when they beat Indiana. Especially in the fashion that they did. I don't think the final score really reflects how lopsided that game was. It was 27-3 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. What I tell everybody is, look, Indiana had to score a touchdown, recover an onside kick, score a touchdown, get the 2-point conversion to then lose by 10. Right. And so at that point, Notre Dame had called off the dogs and the game was over. But the Sugar Bowl was the one against the SEC champs that was this is the game that Notre Dame can't conquer. Yeah. Because what I would tell people is, look, the playoffs against Indiana, that was a big win on like the stage that it was. But let's just say Notre Dame beat Indiana in the regular season. Nobody's walking away saying, hey, that's Notre Dame's biggest win in the regular season since 1993. You know what I mean? So the Georgia game was it. And yes, they had a backup quarterback. But that backup quarterback was the one that led the comeback in the SEC championship game. And that's the thing that I think people fail to understand. That you compound that with all of Notre Dame's injuries, right? They lose their starting left tackle before the season starts. They lose their starting center in week 3. They lose their starting right guard for a month in week 3. They lost their starting Viper defensive end in week 3. Then they lose his backup 2 weeks later. Ben Morrison goes out. Riley Mills is lost for the postseason against Indiana. And so the injuries just started piling up. But of course, the one that everybody focuses on is the starting quarterback position because it's gets the most magnitude. But, they go in and win a game by 13 points. And I think that's a pretty convincing win. And so that was the one that kind of busted the door down and I think gave the team the confidence that was like, hey, we knew we were a really good football team. Now we have the confidence to believe that we can compete with anybody in the country. Right. And so I think that was my takeaway from the Sugar Bowl.
Well, I will say though, I'm glad that Sean McDonough was there to broadcast that game because like he can add that to his collection of classic games like 93 World Series Game 6, 92 NLCS Game 7, and numerous college football games that he's called, including 09 Nebraska, Virginia Tech, and a few others.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the broadcasting crew was solid. I like Sean McDonough. I like Greg McElroy. They did, I believe they did all 3 of Notre Dame's postseason games. So
yeah, McDonald even threw out the puberty voice when Notre Dame hit that game-winning field goal against Penn State.
We got the patented voice crack.
Yeah. And it's good.
No, that game took years off of my life. It was back and forth. I mean, it was But the ending of the game, it was a tale of two different halves. I mean, Notre Dame rushed for 15 yards in the entire first half. They doubled that in their first 3 runs of the second. And so you go through and you look at what this team started to do. They started passing the ball down the field more, which is, I believe, is the one thing that's holding people back from saying, hey, this is a really good Notre Dame football team, is because they don't have that patented downfield passing attack, or they don't have the Jeremiah Smiths, the Ryan Williams. They don't have that guy. Like, they don't even have the Arian Smiths by reputation, right? It's just they have a really good, talented group of guys. That's just the style of the offense doesn't dictate for them throwing the ball 40 times a game, And so I think that feeds into it, but we saw a little bit of it against Penn State. And again, this team found a way to win at some moments where it just felt like it was getting real close to the end.
Yeah.
Real close. But the way the team battled back was fantastic, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Greathouse making some huge plays for Notre Dame in that game. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, his ability to come off the line the way that he did, he gave him a really good move at the line, corner falls, and makes a good move in the open field, takes it in for the touchdown, ties it 24-24. Penn State had the ball with a little bit under a minute left. I think it was like 54 seconds left on the clock to drive down the field and score. Ran one play, and then on the following play, they threw the interception to Christian Gray. And Notre Dame was able to capitalize. That's been the one thing with this team, that throughout the playoffs, previous Notre Dame teams were not able to capitalize on the moment. Right. They weren't able to get that game-ending interception. They weren't able to make the game-winning field goal. They weren't able to battle back from a deficit. And Notre Dame this season has shown that they can win all different types of football games, but they hadn't trailed at halftime since Northern Illinois, which, yeah, I know. So on one hand, heck of a finish to the season, really, after September 7th, of being that dominant in that fashion, not trailing in any game until the Orange Bowl outside of the loss to Northern Illinois. And they came back and battled and did what they needed to, and also went through more injuries as that game went on. Their starting boundary receiver, calf strain, ruled out the rest of the game. Starting right guard, injured his ankle again, ruled out for the rest of the game. And then their left tackle, Anthony Knapp, also went down with an injury, and all that happened in the first half. And Anthony Knapp has now been ruled out for the national championship game. So as if the injury bug couldn't keep compounding for the Irish, it's still here. But if there's one thing that this team has shown, hopefully most of the college football world, is that they're resilient, and the next man in mentality has been constant throughout this year.